It's a special edition of InfoWars Nightly News, September 6, 2011, on this Tuesday edition. And what an important transmission this evening. I'm just 5-6 miles away from some of the worst wildfires Texas has seen in its history, the media is reporting. Tens of thousands of acres, well over 1,000 homes destroyed. There are fires encircling the city and inside the city. The biggest one stretches over 20 miles long, jumping the Colorado River. This all began when record high-powered winds hit the state that's been ravaged by drought on Sunday. I watched as fires neared my home just a few miles away as the sheriff's department tried to dump water on it from helicopters. Well, tonight we're going to break down the fact that the feds have done what they always do. They've come in, taken control of the situation, and ordered the firefighters to stand down. So first, let's get into the wildfires here in the state of Texas. There are fires up in Dallas. There are fires down by San Antonio. Record drought. But the worst we've seen this year are surrounding Austin, Texas. Bastrop County, just east of town. Huge fire stretching over 20 miles. Fires at Steiner Ranch community, shutting down the community. Fires out in the Dripping Springs area. Major roads shut down. All of this happening. And in the middle of it, we have Governor Rick Perry, who pledged not to run for president, who now has come back to Texas, and he's saying that he's going to take good care of everybody and that the campaign means nothing. He's more than happy to fly around in helicopters and grandstand as our savior. And even the local news that normally is full of nothing but sports is cutting away from sports to focus on the disaster. And everybody was basically saying to Perry, thank God you left the campaign trail. Now that you're here, you're going to take good care of us. And bring the feds in. We need the feds to help us. And so Rick Perry said, FEMA, come in and save us. Well, now we have this headline over here. Feds to assume control of Bastrop County fire. Volunteer firemen turned away. And I've made some calls to multiple people that I know in Bastrop and that I also know in Gonzales that's nearby. And I've confirmed that firefighters from all over Texas converged within 12 hours of these fires breaking out Sunday afternoon and were turned away and were told even yesterday, before FEMA announced they were coming, that you've got to go through the National Forest Service. You've got to get FEMA approval to be here, that the State Firefighting Association are basically minions of the feds. Now, this is important. Until about 5 years ago, especially with fires, the governor would call out the National Guard under his control to fight fires and coordinate with firefighters, who volunteer, regular firemen and women, you name it. Well, now you've got to basically go to FEMA if you've signed up for federal support beforehand, and then FEMA takes 3 or 4 days to show up, and then once they show up, they say, well, you were already here fighting fires, you didn't go through our bureaucracy, so go home. And the firefighters that I've talked to and the firefighters that are also in the paper say that they say, well, I want to sign up to help. Well, we're not set up for that yet, so then there's no response. And that's what's being announced in our news. They're announcing since Sunday night. It's now Tuesday evening. So for 2 days, they've been saying we're not going to fight the fires, just evacuate as we wait for the feds to show up. And now the local fire departments that did their job and didn't stand down, the feds are telling them to take a hike. And the firefighters that are coming in to help them are being told to take a hike. Why is this being done? It's all about a federal power grab. What happened in Katrina? What did we see in Katrina? We saw them show up day one and go in and cut the police communication tower lines. That was in the news. Till the police put armed guards there to protect it, FEMA still came back and tried to cut it. Because FEMA said, the police aren't doing what we said, you're letting volunteers come in from around the country, we are in control. And by the way, we're going into the high and dry areas, and we are going to take the firearms. And we're going to get to that piece here in a moment. But first, I wanted to show you some footage. That's footage that Rob Jacobson shot pretty close to our office here today, just east of here. That's what you see billowing up basically in any direction you look as Austin is ringed in flame. We'll go back to some of that footage in a moment. But first, I want to go to a clip, kind of a compilation of mainstream media with Rick Perry flying around surveying the damage. Now, as of Monday, more than 24 hours into this, it was News Radio 590 KLBJ talk radio that I heard coordinating with firefighters calling in, coordinating on live shows, and KLBJ reporting, well, they haven't gotten old folks out of Steiner Ranch community that they evacuated. And meanwhile, the hippies were all out trying to evacuate animal shelters that weren't even in danger as some stunt to get animals adopted, which I'm fine with if it wasn't a stunt and people weren't in danger. So 24 hours later, they said we might want to get the old folks home at Steiner Ranch. It's a whole old folks area. Since they evacuated the rest of that giant subdivision on the river, we better get the old folks out. And then Rick Perry, was asked by a reporter, hey, how is this going to affect your whole campaign? And Rick Perry said, hey, the campaign means nothing to me right now. I'm busy about saving lives. Really? And then everybody cheered, yay, he's here. He's here to save us.
I'll be real honest with you. I'm not paying any attention to politics right now. There's plenty of time to take care of that.
Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is teleprompter-free television. That's why a minute before we went on air, I had to basically decide to get on air a little bit later just so I could go over these news articles, just so I could make phone calls, just so I could confirm this information. And sure enough, that is exactly what we have now discovered. Not only from the Gonzales Cannon, the major paper there in that town, but also from sources I got on the phone with in Bastrop and also in Gonzales. This is unprecedented. Now, FEMA's trying to spin this. When you read the article, the Gonzales Cannon talks to these firefighters, people that drove in from Kirbyville, from Kingsville, from other areas, and they drove in and they told everybody, hey, we're here to help. This is on Monday. And the Texas Fire Chiefs Association, USFA, and FEMA told them that if you wanted to volunteer even from another department or from a volunteer fire department, most areas that is the firefighters, that you have to be activated by the National Forestry Service through FEMA. Now, Perry is asked about when's FEMA coming. He says, well, I'm calling them in. They're coming Wednesday. Wednesday hadn't happened yet. But this morning, I drove over to Steiner Ranch and watched dozens of fire trucks lined up and what looked like FEMA people going around giving them orders. There were FEMA vehicles out there. So they're already here, but they don't have the infrastructure set up. So they're ordering the volunteer fire departments, the regular fire departments, and others to stand down while FEMA gets its act together and I guess demands more congressional funding before they do anything. They waited 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days to help anybody. All they did was put a cordon around New Orleans and shoot people trying to walk out on the highways and then go to the dry areas and confiscate the firearms. This is incredible. But there's more on Rick Perry over here on the screen. The other article we've got is out of Raw Story, and they're also reporting on a KVUE TV report. Texas Governor Rick Perry cut fire department funding by 75% from $30 million to $7 million last year, and then again in the legislature this year. Now, again, if we're going to have a government system, it better be for police and fire. But instead, all over the country, under austerity, they're cutting police. They're cutting fire. The police aren't responding to normal crime. They're only out there revenue generating. They admit this in most areas. The fire departments won't show up unless you pay them extra fees because they're having their funding cut. This is happening everywhere. But we're paying trillions of dollars to the private Federal Reserve and our income taxes to be paid to offshore banks in a bailout that we don't even owe, to derivatives we didn't create. This is why I'm so angry. This is why I'm so upset. This guy's for forced inoculations. This guy was for handing over 8,000 miles of Texas roads and eminent domain to Centra of Spain and others with the NAPTA superhighway. This guy was Al Gore's chief of staff in Texas. He supported Hillary Care in the mid-1990s. This guy, Rick Perry, on your screen, is an absolute joke. Now, in some of the other news, again, Perry expected FEMA in Texas Wednesday. Perry has said that he expects Federal Emergency Management Agency to arrive in Texas Wednesday. That's CBS News. Well, they were already here yesterday telling everybody to stand down, and today. And then a FEMA spokesperson told the paper, well, that is our procedure, but we're not there yet, so we have an order to stand down. But meanwhile, I've talked to the firefighters, and the Texas Firefighting Association says they've been told stand down till FEMA gets here. This is incredible. So Perry and Obama and the rest of them are fiddling while Texas burns. Just incredible. Continuing with other Rick Perry news. Perry mum on GOP debate as Texas wildfires rage. Rick Perry never wants to debate. That's why he debated, once in his last gubernatorial run. Because he doesn't want to be called the carpet for issues. But there's record funding for DHS and Homeland Security, but it's all spying on your neighbors, threat fusion centers to federalized police, face scanning cameras, microphones, license plate reading cameras. None of it has to do with fires and earthquakes and real emergencies, because it's all a political and paramilitary system to suppress the people. Speaking to CBS News from the state capital of Austin, Perry wouldn't say whether he'd attended the Republican debate scheduled for Wednesday night at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Library in Simi Valley, California. So there you go. He's still figuring out with his political pundits what the best move is. Now, we got Gerald Celente coming up. We got Paul Joseph Watson coming up as well. Forgot to mention that at the start because I'm so angry about what's happening here. And the fact that the fire's coming this way, it could burn down this studio. And FEMA will probably stand right there and roast hot dogs while it happens and then grandstand as saviors. Maybe even come to my house and take my guns. People will say, well, George Bush did it. Hell, Rick Perry, please take our guns. This is disgusting by a criminal, disgusting political class that thinks they own us and use every crisis for another out-of-control federal power grab. Now, lest you forget, remember Katrina. Remember the FEMA stand down of all the police that tried to help and firefighters and rescue people and EMTs from around the country. Never forget that. So we're going to go to this piece reminding you that in an emergency, they'll load you into a Superdome, but if you live in the wealthy, high and dry area with a generator, they're going to come put you in handcuffs, blow open your gun safe, take your firearms, and 5.5 years later, these people haven't gotten their guns back. Remember, that's who Perry called in, was FEMA. That's what you'd expect from a cheerleader for Al Gore.
Guns will be taken, and no one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
Today in New Orleans, they got a lot tougher on the holdouts.
Police department and your home!
Not only the flooded areas, but New Orleans' driest and wealthiest neighborhoods, too.
Police department!
The police and National Guard going street by street, house to house.
We need to make sure, too, that whenever we knock on doors, people refuse to leave. We need to make note, call it in.
They say there are no orders to use force, just strong persuasion, sometimes entering open houses with guns drawn, and instructions to disarm anyone inside. That happened today in this wealthy neighborhood where homeowners had armed themselves to protect their mansions. Residents were handcuffed on the ground. In the end, police took their weapons but let them stay in their homes.
They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons.
And ended up like this.
Then, Patty showed them a small revolver she was carefully holding in the palm of her hand. A camera crew was there to capture what unfolded next.
I said, it's not even loaded. And I dropped it on the floor.
You got a gun?
Well, they punched me in the face. Look at my black blue marks. Look at what they did to me. They dragged me out of here.